friends that would come stay with us. Your mother-in-law, my mother-in-law, your grandmother, that they would nothing. They experienced nothing. So I could see where somebody can move, a family can move in, and they would never experience anything because they're not sensitive to those kinds of things.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So I think most people, if they were sensitive to it, they'd know it right away.
Yeah. That's kind of like John. Like of the five of us, John really
You really didn't have
wasn't
anything.
affected ever.
Yeah, yeah. So, and the other thing was too, I think after your mother passed away in that house, I was kind of because nothing, I had nothing happen to me after that, and that was what additional couple of additional
2
2 years.
years, yeah.
I kind of felt that she might have just got them to pass on. It's like time for you to move on.
Rallied the troops, like, follow me.
so, so they may have and they even today if you contact them they may have experienced nothing. So
And do you think, I mean, I know what the medium said, and I know, how we all feel as a family, but do you personally think that it was the house or that it was the land or it was a mixture of both?
no, I think it was land, and she was pretty adamant about that when she came. She said it wasn't the house because all this goes back before the houses were even in there.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, she even described how the land was with the Native Americans encamped on one side and settlers on the other. Um, so that goes back far enough. There was, that was way outside of Denver, so it's probably, a stagecoach or migratory route from the south of Denver into Denver. So, or into Littleton, it wasn't that far from Littleton, but it's probably a good horse ride from our house to get to the downtown Littleton that was there. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, I kind of remember her talking about how there was like a roadway to the original Rothawood farm or Highlands Ranch, basically the original
right. Well, there
Highlands
probably
Ranch.
was. Yeah, there probably was because that was almost straight south of
Yeah.
where we were at. So, and then I think the other thing was too is I started asking after the median mentioned that I started asking neighbors subtly, without being too obvious. Has anything strange happened? Well, our neighbor next door, the folks that live there, he said, yeah, they had some things, but he said when all the kids were there, he said the house was so loud he never noticed anything. But he said when he was after they all had grown up, moved out of the house, and then they bought a new place, and the wife went there, and he was at that house by himself, getting it ready to sell it. He was saying he started getting some strange things were happening. He's like, what the? And he's an engineer too. And he's like me. He's like, well, there's an explanation for this, but he could never find one. He's like, I don't know what's happening here. And then we had other people we knew within that overall neighborhood that said, we've had stuff. We had different people. That's like when you mention it, then they start going on about the stuff that they've experienced. So yeah, I think it was the area. I don't think it had anything to do with the house. You know,
It's
it was just
interesting because so through this getting so popular, I've actually had a couple people DM me that are from like that square block. If you look at the four main streets, I'm not going to
a
say
square
them,
mile. Yeah,
but
yeah,
they're from there.
yeah,
And one of them said she was like, well, nothing crazy ever happened, but like the basement was so uncomfortable. Like
yeah,
everyone was kind of freaked out about the basement, and she said she and her family had the feeling of being like watched a lot, like they weren't
yeah,
alone. um and I had another person DM me that said basically the same thing, that like the it was just a creepy vibe
yeah,
in there. So yeah,
yeah,
I think that's probably the land.
yeah. And I think that because when you think about it, like our house, our basement was probably closer to the actual original level of the ground that was there.
Yeah.
That the upper floors were that was all fill that was put in. So
And you think, I want to circle back a little bit just because it is a question I've actually gotten a couple times, and it's a question that I've never in my life even considered.
mhm.
But do you think the level of activity, I know you had mentioned earlier, like you noticed changes in Ed, and he may have been too young to really verbalize what he was experiencing, but you noticed like changes in him.
Yeah.
Do you think that um, Ed and I kind of experiencing these things when we did affected like our performance in school or any other like our I guess our behavior in the house as well?
Well, I think it did with that for sure. I mean, I remember because he'd go up there. That's what I always was wondering. What is he doing? Because he would close his door and stuff clothes or towels around the bottom part of the door and around the door to try to keep something out.
Yeah.
And then Ed was at that time. I remember my password on my computer at that time was Blue Ed, I think, because he got very melancholy and kind of sad. And of course, you think of Ed today, it's not even doesn't make any sense.
It's not.
And it didn't make any sense when he got into high school either. I mean, it just but when he was younger, I think it did affect his mood and his attitude, and it probably did you as well. So
Yeah,
but
I
like
think
I said, John, eh,
John just John is just vibing in
yeah,
his own lane,
didn't affect him at all.
not getting bothered at all. I always think that I do have to say though, I think I told you and mom, like when I moved back in 2016 and was sleeping in his old bedroom,
Yeah,
it was the least bothered I'd ever been in that house.
yeah, yeah.
Like
That
Ed's
right
room,
there.
forget it. The basement and what ended up being my room, which eventually became the study once you redid the
Right,
basement.
right.
Um, the quality and type of sleep and activity I had in those rooms versus John's room was like night
Mhm.
and day.
Yeah, yeah,
Like nobody was ever in John's room. I'd hear stuff in the hallway, but like never in the room.
yeah.
So it might also be, maybe John's just not really open to it. And then on top of it, he just happened to be in a room that they didn't
Well, and I think
mess
I
with.
think what Ed was impacted by was the really nasty spirit that the exorcist got out of there. I
Yeah.
think that changed a lot for him once she did that. She was talking about the spirits because she was obviously very adept at seeing the auras of people and understanding that, and she could sense the spirits that were in the house, and which she said were many. She only pointed out a few of them that we kind of knew: the older lady and the little child. But she said there's a very angry man here that says. I remember your mother was always she's like, do you feel like somebody's chasing you up the stairs when you come out of the basement from doing the laundry? And she said, oh yeah. She said, well, there is.
There
There is
actually
somebody
is.
chasing you. There is. And I think he was the one that come up the stairs and go into Ed's room.
Yeah. So I was going to say, so one of the stories I did also share is when we were transitioning me upstairs and I slept in Ed's room for a couple nights while we
Yeah.
were moving the stuff around. I actually I slept with the door open and saw that guy on the stairs. And I
Yeah.
was just going to say for like everybody who's watching, so my brother Ed, it was his room that we're talking about, and it was at the end of the hall, and Ed would shove towels and laundry underneath the door at night when he slept because he said the door would slam open like all the time. So he tried to keep that guy out by blockading
Yeah.
his door.
But